stop right now. Before you take your next breath, understand something that could change the entire trajectory of your life. There are two versions of you existing simultaneously at this very moment. The first version is the one sitting in traffic, scrolling through other people's highlight reels, whispering to yourself that maybe you're just not built for the life you secretly crave. That version makes deals with mediocrity. It negotiates with fear. It wakes up on Monday mornings already counting down to Friday. The second version, that version is a force of nature. It's the you that finishes a great book at 2 a.m. and feels genuinely alive. The you that catches a glimpse in the mirror after a hard workout and thinks, yeah, I could be something. The you that has a dream so specific you almost feel embarrassed to say it out loud. Here's the gut punch nobody tells you. The only wall between those two versions isn't your bank account, your zip code, your education, your past, or the people who doubted you. It's a single 4-syllable word: self-belief. And here's what makes this genuinely radical. Self-belief is not something you're born with or without. It's not a gift handed to some people and withheld from others. It is a system. It is a skill. It is something you can engineer, build, and make permanent. This audiobook will show you exactly how. You will learn the science behind why your brain keeps you locked in limitation. You will discover the precise mental architecture of the world's most unstoppable people. And step by step, chapter by chapter, you will rebuild yourself from the inside out until doubt isn't just manageable, it's irrelevant. By the time you reach the final words of this book, you won't just hope you can succeed. You will know you are unstoppable. Let's begin. The mind cage. Why average feels so comfortable. Here's a truth that most motivational content will never say out loud. Your biggest obstacle isn't the economy, your competition, your background, or bad timing. Your biggest obstacle is the automated, running in the background, never clocking out mental program that whispers, "You're not the type of person who does things like that." That voice isn't wisdom. It isn't realism. It isn't even yours, not originally. It was installed. Think about this. You were not born afraid of failure. You were not born believing you were ordinary. Watch any 2-year-old on a playground, and you'll see raw, unfiltered confidence. They fall. They get up. They try again. They haven't learned yet that falling is supposed to be humiliating. But then life happens. A teacher marks up your paper in red ink and says, "You don't think critically." A parent trying to protect you says, "Don't get your hopes up." A coach cuts you from the team and you silently file it under evidence that you're simply not enough. Your brain, designed above all else for survival, draws a conclusion. Wanting too much leads to pain. Stay small, stay safe. And just like that, without any formal announcement, a cage gets built around your potential. The cage isn't made of iron. It's made of repetition. It's made of every time you held back. Every time you said, "I'm not really that kind of person." Every time you let someone else's ceiling become your floor. Here's what makes this deeply unfair. These limitations feel like facts. They don't feel like programming. They feel like self-awareness. You think you're just being realistic when you shrink your dreams. You think you're being humble when you pre-apologize for your ambitions. But here is the truth that will crack this cage wide open. Not one of those limitations is real. Right now, at this exact moment, there are people less intelligent than you achieving things you only let yourself dream about at 11 p.m. when no one is watching. There are people who started later than you with fewer resources, worse circumstances, and a rougher history, and they are building extraordinary lives. The single difference? They decided to believe, and you haven't. Yet, your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between what is real and what you repeatedly tell it. Feed it stories of limitation, and it will build a world that proves those stories true. It will make you miss opportunities. It will make you self-sabotage right before breakthroughs. It will make your outer reality match your inner programming with frightening precision. This is why willpower alone never works. Long term, you cannot muscle your way out of a belief system with sheer effort. It's like trying to sprint forward while someone holds you by the collar. You exhaust yourself and barely move. The first revolution starts with one recognition. Your beliefs about yourself are not facts. They are habits of thought so well worn that they feel like facts. And habits can be changed. The walls of your mind cage are made of thought. The lock is made of fear. And the key has always been in your hand. You just forgot you were holding it. The rewire, what neuroscience says about who you can become. For decades, the scientific establishment operated under a comfortable but catastrophically wrong assumption. The adult brain is fixed. Whatever neural architecture you developed in childhood, you were essentially stuck with. Millions of people use this assumption, consciously or not, as permission to stop trying to change. Then neuroscience blew the whole thing up. What researchers discovered changes everything. Your brain is not a finished product. It is a permanent construction zone. Every single thought you think, every emotion you feel, every experience you have is physically restructuring the neural landscape of your mind. This process, neuroplasticity, is the biological foundation of complete personal transformation. Let's make this concrete. When you think a thought, your brain creates a neural pathway, a literal physical connection between neurons. Think that same thought again, and the pathway strengthens. Think it hundreds of times and it becomes an automatic superhighway. Your thoughts don't just reflect who you are, they construct who you are, one repetition at a time. This is how limiting beliefs become so bulletproof. They aren't just ideas you hold loosely. They are physical structures built through years of repetition, reinforced by emotion, confirmed by selective attention. The good news is that those structures can be demolished and rebuilt. Every time you consciously choose a new thought about yourself, you are literally doing construction work on your brain. Every time you act in alignment with who you want to become, rather than who you've been, you are laying new neural track. But here's where most people go wrong. They think occasional positive thinking is enough. It is not. Your brain doesn't change based on what you occasionally hope. It changes based on what you consistently practice. If you spend 10 minutes a day affirming your potential, and then spend the remaining 14 hours running on old programs of doubt and avoidance, your brain will strengthen the dominant pattern. And right now, the dominant pattern might still be limitation. This is why transformation requires what neuroscientists call immersive, consistent, emotionally charged new programming. You have to think, feel, and act from your desired identity so frequently that your brain has no choice but to build new infrastructure to support it. There's also a remarkable structure in your brain called the reticular activating system, your internal filter. Your RAS is programmed by your beliefs and determines what information gets highlighted in your awareness. Believe you're unlucky, and your RAS will surface every piece of evidence confirming that belief while filtering out contradicting data. Believe you're capable and destined for growth, and your RAS will start noticing opportunities, patterns, and resources you literally could not see before. When you change what you believe, you change what you perceive. Then there are mirror neurons, specialized brain cells that fire both when you act and when you watch someone else act. This is why the people you spend the most time with quietly rewire your brain. Surround yourself with people who doubt themselves, make excuses, and settle for less. And those neural patterns begin to mirror inside you. Surround yourself with people who operate from bold self-belief and relentless action. And your brain begins to absorb and replicate those patterns instead. Your brain is not your past. It is your raw material. The question is no longer whether you can rewire yourself. The science settled that. The only question now is whether you are willing to do the consistent, deliberate work of building the neural architecture of an unstoppable person. Because your brain is waiting, and it will build whatever you give it the most consistent input to build. The identity. Upgrade. Stop performing and start becoming. Here is the most underrated truth in all of personal development. You will never permanently outperform your own self-concept. You can have the best strategy, the best mentor, the best opportunity, and still unconsciously engineer your way back down to wherever your identity says you belong. This is why lottery winners go broke, why people lose 50 pounds and gain it all back, why breakthrough moments fade into old patterns within weeks. Results follow identity, always. Most people try to hack this equation the wrong way. They want different outcomes while maintaining the same inner story about who they are. They want success while identifying as someone who struggles. They want confidence while carrying an identity built on insecurity. It doesn't work, not because they aren't trying hard enough, but because the operating system they're running is still the old one. Your current identity was not chosen consciously. It was assembled from fragments. The nickname a sibling gave you that stuck. The subject you failed in 7th grade. The relationship that ended badly. The time you tried something brave and it didn't work out. From each of these experiences, your brain extracted a conclusion, and those conclusions stacked into a self-concept that now runs on autopilot. The dangerous thing about an autopilot identity is that it isn't neutral. It's active. It's filtering your choices, shaping your habits, and quietly steering you back toward its definition of normal for you, even when your conscious mind is pointing elsewhere. Here's the liberating part. That identity is not you. It's a story your brain assembled from incomplete data. The person who says, "I'm just not confident in social situations," isn't describing a fixed biological truth. They're describing a behavior they've practiced so consistently that it has become part of their story. The person who calls themselves not a finisher isn't confessing a personality flaw. They're reporting a habit loop, and habit loops can be interrupted. To become unstoppable, you must do something that feels audacious at first. Consciously choose a new identity and begin acting from it before you feel ready. Not fake it till you make it. That framing is too passive. This is decide it, then become it. Start with radical clarity. Who is your unstoppable self? Not what do they have or achieve. Who are they being? How do they speak to themselves at 6 a.m.? How do they respond when a deal falls through, a relationship gets hard, or a plan fails spectacularly? What standards do they hold without negotiation? Write it down with specificity. Don't filter it with what feels realistic based on your current state. Your current identity wasn't realistic when it formed either. It just got there through repetition. Once you have that vision, start doing something psychologists call identity rehearsal. It takes small, low-stakes moments to act as your new identity. Not big, dramatic gestures. Small, consistent choices. Speak up in the conversation where you'd normally stay quiet. Follow through on the commitment you made to yourself when no one is watching. Choose the difficult option that your unstoppable self would choose, even when your old self is pulling hard in the opposite direction. Every one of these choices is a vote for who you are becoming. Your old identity will resist. It will whisper that you're being fake, that this isn't really you, that people will notice something is off. Ignore it. That resistance isn't a sign of inauthenticity. It's a sign of growth. The discomfort of becoming is not a red flag. It is the exact sensation of your identity upgrading. Your real self, your authentic self, is not the version shaped by old wounds and outdated fears. Your real self is the version uncaged. Fear is the arrow, what your anxiety is actually pointing. And most people have an adversarial relationship with fear. They treat it as an enemy to overcome, suppress, or escape. Unstoppable people discovered something different. Fear isn't the obstacle. Fear is the map. Every time that tight-chested, stomach-dropping sensation shows up, it is pointing directly at the territory where your next breakthrough lives. Fear doesn't show up randomly. It shows up precisely where you are approaching the edge of your current comfort zone, which is to say, precisely where growth is possible. The voice that says, "Who do you think you are when you dare to dream out loud?" is not the voice of truth. It is the voice of your nervous system, trying to protect you from anything unfamiliar. Your brain is hardwired to treat novelty as potential danger. It's an ancient survival mechanism. The problem is that in 2025, the things that scare us most aren't predators. They're possibilities. Starting the business, having the honest conversation, putting the work out publicly, believing in yourself loud enough that people might actually notice and might actually push back. Here's what nobody tells you about playing it safe. Staying small is not a neutral act. It is an act of slow self-destruction. Every time you silence a dream, negotiate with mediocrity, or choose the comfortable path over the meaningful one, you aren't protecting yourself. You are eroding yourself. The regret that accumulates from unlived potential is far heavier than any fear you will ever face. Fear wears many disguises. Sometimes it shows up as logic, giving you elaborate, rational-sounding reasons why this isn't the right time, why the odds are against you, why someone else is better positioned. Sometimes it arrives as false humility. Who am I to want this? Sometimes it comes wrapped in concern. What will people think? The most treacherous form is fear of success itself. Deep in the subconscious, many people have inherited beliefs that equate success with isolation, with selfishness, with unwanted responsibility. These beliefs don't announce themselves. They operate underground, quietly sabotaging your efforts at the exact moment you're about to break through. Fear of being fully responsible for your own life is also real. When you commit to believing in yourself completely, you lose the comfort of excuses. You can no longer blame your circumstances, your parents, your education, or the economy. You become the architect, and that level of ownership can feel terrifying until you realize it is the only true path to freedom. So how do you move through fear rather than away from it? First, name it precisely. Vague fear is suffocating. Specific fear is workable. Don't just say, "I'm afraid of starting." Ask, "What exactly am I afraid of?" The specific answer reveals the specific thing you need to address. Second, run the worst-case scenario. Deliberately, fully. What is the actual worst thing that could happen if you try and fail completely? Map it out in detail. Then ask yourself, could I survive that? Could I recover? Almost universally, the answer is yes. And that realization deflates the fear's power dramatically. Third, flip the equation. Instead of asking what you might lose by moving forward, ask what you are guaranteed to lose by staying still. In 5 years, if nothing changes, what dreams will have expired? What version of yourself will you have abandoned? The pain of a regret-filled future is more motivating than almost any fear when you let yourself actually feel it. Fourth, take action while afraid, not after you stop being scared. While scared, because fear and excitement are physiologically almost identical. Elevated heart rate, heightened senses, adrenaline, and the only difference is the story you tell about those sensations. Reframe the feeling. This means it matters. This means I'm about to grow. The voice that says you can't is not prophetic. It is old programming running a protection script that was never designed for the life you're actually capable of living. You have another voice, quieter, steadier, more persistent than the noise of fear. It says, you can handle this. You always have. Keep going. That's the voice to follow. The validation trap. Why outside approval will never be enough. There is a silent epidemic running through modern American life, and it has nothing to do with the news cycle or the economy. It's the epidemic of people who have handed the keys to their self-worth to everyone around them. People who wake up and, before they've had a single conscious thought of their own, reach for their phone to measure how the world responded to them overnight. People who make career decisions based on what their parents will think. People who shrink their personalities in rooms where they're not sure they'll be accepted. People who have become so dependent on external validation that the absence of it, a slow text response, a lukewarm reaction, an unenthusiastic comment, sends them into a spiral of self-doubt. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. From childhood, most of us were taught, explicitly or not, that love and belonging are conditional. Perform well and receive warmth. Behave correctly and receive approval. The school system grades you. Your parents praise or criticize you. Social media quantifies your worth in likes and shares. By adulthood, seeking external validation feels as natural and necessary as breathing. But here is the brutal math. No amount of external approval will ever satisfy someone who doesn't approve of themselves first. You can receive standing ovations and still feel hollow if your internal narrative is one of inadequacy. You can be surrounded by people who admire you and still feel profoundly alone if you haven't developed a genuine relationship with yourself. And the reverse is also true. When you develop real, unshakable self-validation, criticism stops being devastating and praise stops being addictive. You become internally stable in a way that external circumstances simply cannot disrupt. Here's something worth sitting with. Other people's opinions of you are not objective data. They are filtered through their own fears, their own wounds, their own history. When someone dismisses your ambition, they are often projecting their own relationship with limitation. When someone criticizes your confidence, they are frequently revealing their own discomfort with your growth. Their judgment is not a verdict on your potential. It is a window into theirs. The path to self-validation begins with radical self-awareness. Start noticing, without judgment, how often your emotional state is determined by external input. How many of your decisions are quietly shaped by imagined reactions from other people? How much mental energy do you spend in the invisible audience's head, predicting how they'll perceive you? This awareness alone is not comfortable, but it is essential. Next, begin building an internal scoring system. Define your own standards of excellence, growth, and integrity. What matters to you? Not to your boss, your parents, your social circle. What would you be proud of, independent of anyone else's recognition? When you answer to your own standards instead of the shifting winds of external opinion, you become remarkably hard to destabilize. Start celebrating your wins, privately, consistently, not for an audience, just between you and yourself. Most people are fluent in self-criticism and barely conversational in self-appreciation. Reverse that ratio. When you follow through on something difficult, acknowledge it. When you choose growth over comfort, honor that choice. This is not arrogance. It is the practice of building the one relationship that will outlast every other relationship in your life. Stop apologizing for your existence. Stop pre-softening your ideas. Stop qualifying your opinions before you've even stated them. You have a right to take up space. You have a right to have an opinion. You have a right to pursue what you want without staging a referendum on whether you deserve it. The opinion of the person in the mirror is the only one that doesn't come and go. Develop it. Strengthen it. Protect it. Because the moment you stop needing the world to validate you is the moment you become genuinely free and genuinely unstoppable. Mental movie making, programming your brain for inevitable success. Here is something the world's elite performers have known for decades that most people never discover. Your brain cannot reliably distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. This is not a motivational metaphor. This is neuroscience. When you visualize yourself succeeding with complete sensory and emotional detail, your brain fires the same neural patterns it would fire if you were actually living that success. The experience becomes neurologically real, and your brain begins building the physical structures to support it as your new normal. Most people use their imagination as a weapon against themselves. They don't realize they're doing it, but they are. They mentally rehearse the presentation going wrong. They pre-live the rejection. They visualize themselves freezing up, saying the wrong thing, being embarrassed in front of people who matter to them. They run these scenarios on repeat, with incredible emotional intensity, and then wonder why they feel so anxious and ill-equipped. You can flip this completely. You can use the same mechanism that creates anxiety and self-doubt to build unshakable confidence and program your subconscious for inevitable success. Elite athletes have been doing this for generations. Before championship competitions, the world's best performers spend hours in what sports psychologists call mental rehearsal, running perfect performances through their minds in vivid detail, feeling the execution, the decision-making, the pressure, and the victory before any of it has happened physically. Research shows that this mental practice produces improvements in performance almost comparable to physical practice, and when combined with physical preparation, it outperforms either alone. Here's how to do this correctly. Start with state. Find a quiet place. Sit comfortably. Take several slow, deep breaths until your body softens. This relaxed state makes your subconscious far more receptive to new programming. It's the equivalent of opening the door before walking in. Build the scene with specificity. Don't vaguely imagine being successful. Build a complete sensory environment. If you're preparing for a high-stakes business pitch in Chicago, see the exact conference room. Feel the fabric of the chair. Hear the sound of the city outside the window. See yourself walking in, posture certain, energy grounded. Hear your voice, clear, measured, compelling. Watch the faces of the people in the room as your words land with impact. Feel the internal satisfaction of knowing you are fully prepared and fully present. Charge it with emotion. Emotion is the language of the subconscious. Logic doesn't reach it. Feeling does. When you feel the genuine satisfaction of delivering your best performance, when you let yourself experience the pride and the certainty of success during visualization, you are installing those emotional states as your new baseline. Your brain begins to expect them. It starts organizing your behavior to recreate them. Rehearse twice daily. 10 to 15 minutes in the morning, before the world has a chance to program you for limitation. 10 to 15 minutes before sleep, when your subconscious is most receptive. The consistency of this practice is what transforms it from a technique into a rewiring. Visualize the journey, not just the destination. Don't only rehearse the win, rehearse the obstacles. Visualize yourself facing unexpected complications and navigating them with calm intelligence. Visualize yourself recovering from a stumble with grace. When you mentally rehearse the full spectrum of the experience, you arrive prepared not just for ideal conditions, but for real ones. Use all 5 senses. The more sensory rich your visualization, the more neurologically real it becomes. Hear it, feel it, smell it, experience it fully. One critical note: mental rehearsal amplifies action. It doesn't replace it. The goal is to arrive at each real situation having already succeeded in your mind, so that your physical performance becomes a replay of what you've already lived internally. Visualization without execution is daydreaming. Visualization combined with consistent action is transformation. Your imagination is one of the most powerful engineering tools you possess. Every invention in human history, every breakthrough, every impossible achievement that became ordinary, it all began as a vivid mental image in someone's mind. Stop using yours to rehearse your fears. Start using it to architect your future. The daily discipline, building habits that make confidence inevitable. Let's be direct about something that most self-help content dances around. Confidence is not a feeling you wait for. It is a practice you show up to. Unstoppable people are not people who never feel uncertain. They are people who have built such consistent mental habits that uncertainty cannot gain the foothold it needs to become paralysis. The greatest lie about confidence is that you're supposed to feel it first and then act. That's backwards. You act, even when uncertain, even when afraid, even when every old program in your head is screaming that you're not ready. And through that action, especially through the repeated completion of hard things, confidence is forged. Real, durable self-belief is built the same way a bridge is built, not in one dramatic construction effort, but through consistent, deliberate daily work that compounds into something structurally unshakable. Here is what that daily work looks like. Your morning sets everything. The first 20 minutes of your day are neural real estate of extraordinary value. Your subconscious is freshly emerged from the sleep state, which means it is highly impressionable. What you feed it first becomes the lens through which you interpret the entire day. Most people squander this window by immediately consuming news, notifications, and other people's priorities. Instead, use it to program yourself. Read something that expands your thinking. Review your goals and the evidence that you are capable of achieving them. Visualize the person you are becoming. Speak your identity out loud if you need to. Monitor your internal dialogue without mercy. This is not a soft suggestion. It is the most important cognitive discipline you can develop. Your internal conversation is running constantly, and it is programming your subconscious mind every single moment. Start catching the limiting thoughts the instant they arise. I can't handle this. I'm not ready. This is too hard. Each time one surfaces, stop it and replace it, not with empty positivity, but with an honest, growth-oriented reframe. I'm learning how to handle this. I'm building readiness. Difficulty is where growth happens. At first, this requires active effort. It feels tedious. Over time, it becomes automatic. And when it becomes automatic, you have officially changed your default operating system. Keep promises to yourself. This might be the most underrated builder of self-belief in existence. Every time you commit to something, getting up at 5:30, finishing the chapter, making the call you've been avoiding, and then you follow through. You send an unmistakable signal to your subconscious. I am someone who does what I say. That identity of integrity compounds rapidly, and every time you break a promise to yourself, the opposite message lands with equal power. Start small if you need to. Keep a promise to yourself today that is so manageable it almost seems trivial. Then do it again tomorrow, and the next day. The size of the commitment matters far less than the act of following through. End each day with an intentional review. Before sleep, spend 5 minutes acknowledging what you did, what you learned, and where you showed up with more courage than the day before. Not a performance review, a recognition. Your subconscious will integrate these acknowledgments during sleep, reinforcing your identity as someone capable of growth. This 5-minute practice costs almost nothing and compounds into a fundamentally different relationship with yourself over months. Use your body as a tool. Neuroscience has confirmed what athletes have always intuited. Your physiology shapes your psychology. Posture, movement, breath. They're not just physical states. They actively alter your emotional and cognitive state. Stand taller. Breathe deeper. Move with intention rather than apology. Maintain these practices even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Your nervous system will follow. Protect your environment fiercely. Your environment, the content you consume, the people you spend time with, the physical spaces you inhabit, is programming you constantly, whether you are aware of it or not. Audit it. What are you regularly feeding your mind? Who are you allowing extended access to your energy? Every input either reinforces your unstoppable identity or undermines it. There is no neutral. Discipline is not about being hard on yourself. It is about being consistently honest about what serves the person you are becoming. And choosing that repeatedly even when ease is available. You don't need a perfect day. You need a consistent direction. Every right choice, no matter how small, is a brick. Build deliberately enough and long enough, and the structure becomes something no external force can shake. The comeback architecture, turning every setback into fuel. Let's talk about the thing that most people are actually afraid of, not failure itself, but what failure might mean about them. Because here is how it actually works in the mind. A setback happens. Maybe it's a deal that falls apart, a relationship that ends, a project that fails publicly, an opportunity that goes to someone else. The event itself is painful, but manageable. What turns it from temporary pain into lasting damage is the story the mind immediately attaches to it. This proves I'm not good enough. This confirms what I always suspected. This is the universe telling me to stop trying. That story, not the failure, is what destroys people. Unstoppable people experience setbacks. They experience them frequently, sometimes spectacularly. The difference isn't that they get knocked down less. It's that they have developed a completely different architecture for how they process and respond to being knocked down. The first pillar of that architecture is separation of event and identity. Your performance in a specific situation is not your identity. A pitch that doesn't land is not proof that you are fundamentally untalented. A relationship that ends is not evidence that you are unlovable. A business that fails is not confirmation that you were never meant to succeed. You are not your results. You are a person with evolving skills and strategies, some of which are working and some of which need refinement. That's it. The moment you make a setback means something about your fundamental worth. You've compounded a painful event into a damaging belief. And beliefs are far harder to recover from than events. The second pillar is rapid lesson extraction. Within hours of any meaningful failure, ask 3 questions. What did I actually learn from this experience? What would I do differently with the knowledge I have now? What strength did I demonstrate even in this difficult situation? This practice isn't about toxic positivity. It's about mining genuine intelligence from painful experiences before the mind has a chance to generate damage through rumination. The third pillar is reframing failure as information, not verdict. The Wright brothers' early aircraft didn't fly. Edison's early bulb designs didn't illuminate. Every major breakthrough in human history was built on a foundation of unsuccessful attempts that the history books conveniently edit out. The overnight success you admire took years of invisible failure to construct. Stop romanticizing the version of the story that skips the hard parts. The fourth pillar is emotional regulation without suppression. When failure hurts, let it hurt, fully, without dramatizing it. Suppressing the emotion doesn't process it. It just drives it underground, where it fuels anxiety and avoidance. Give yourself space to feel disappointed, frustrated, even momentarily devastated. And then, and this is crucial, do not make permanent identity decisions based on temporary emotional states. Create a setback recovery protocol. Have a specific written process you follow after significant failures. Acknowledge the emotion, give yourself a defined window to process it, hours, not weeks. Extract the lessons, adjust the strategy, and take the next action step. A systematic approach to recovery is 10 times more effective than hoping you'll naturally bounce back. The fifth pillar is cultivating a historical perspective on your own resilience. Think back across your life. Every challenge you believed at the time might be unsurvivable. You survived. Every loss that felt permanent, you adapted. Every failure you were certain meant the end of something meaningful. You grew beyond it. That history is not just memory. It is evidence. Evidence of a resilience you already possessed, already proven, already demonstrated. Use that evidence as armor. The goal isn't to build a life with no setbacks. The goal is to become so skilled at transforming setbacks into forward momentum that failure begins to increase your confidence rather than decrease it. That sounds counterintuitive until you experience it. And then it is simply the most powerful truth in the world. Your comeback always contains information your success never could have provided. The compound effect. How daily micro-choices create. Extraordinary Lives here is a pattern that destroys more potential than almost any other force in human life. People overestimate what they can change in a week and catastrophically underestimate what they can build in 3 years. They look for the dramatic turning point, the seminar that rewires everything, the morning they wake up and are fundamentally different, the conversation, the breakthrough, the moment of sudden transformation. And while they're waiting for that moment, they dismiss the tiny, unglamorous daily choices that are actually building or destroying everything. The compound effect doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care about your motivation on peak days or your excuses on bad days. It responds only to what you actually do, consistently, over time. And it amplifies whatever that is, growth or stagnation, confidence or doubt, with the indifference of mathematics. Every thought you think is a vote, not a decision, a vote. One vote doesn't win an election, but millions of votes cast consistently in the same direction determine everything. The person who votes for their capability 1,000 times more than their doubt over the course of a year is not the same person at the end of that year. They are categorically different in neural architecture, in automatic response patterns, in what feels natural and what feels impossible. Here is where the leverage is, specifically. how you start your morning compounds. The person who begins each day by connecting with their vision, reviewing their capabilities, and setting an intentional direction is, over 365 days, building an entirely different brain than the person who starts each day in reactive mode. This is not a metaphor. This is neuroscience. The emotional and cognitive tone of your first 20 minutes of consciousness shapes the neural patterns of your entire day, and days compound into years. How you talk to yourself compounds. Most people are fluent in self-criticism and practically mute in self-acknowledgement. They notice every failure and rationalize every success. They speak to themselves in language they would never direct at someone they care about. This internal conversation happens thousands of times per day. Over years, it shapes the very structure of how you see yourself with a precision that no external force can match. Changing this conversation is not small. It is foundational. Who you spend time with compounds. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths in personal development because it sometimes requires difficult choices. The people you interact with most frequently are constantly, subtly, invisibly shaping your beliefs about what is normal, possible, and acceptable. Their ceilings become your reference points. Their energy becomes your baseline. Choose this input with the seriousness it deserves. Your standards in small things compound into your identity. The person who follows through on minor commitments to themselves, who maintains discipline in small daily choices, who holds themselves to high standards even when no one is watching, builds an identity over time as someone who can be trusted with bigger things. Not because they declared it, because they proved it to themselves through daily action. Your response to small setbacks compounds into your resilience capacity. Every minor frustration you navigate without collapsing, every tiny disappointment you process and move through cleanly, every small fear you face and walk past, these are reps, and reps build the muscle of resilience that you will draw on when the genuinely large challenges arrive. The extraordinary lives you admire were not built by extraordinary moments. They were built by ordinary people making slightly better choices than average every single day for long enough that the compound effect made the outcome look miraculous from the outside. There is no dramatic secret. There is only the discipline of daily choices and the patience to let them accumulate into something unstoppable. Mental invincibility. The unshakable core that nothing can touch. There is a threshold. On one side of it, your confidence is still a hostage to circumstances. It rises when things go well and crumbles when they don't. You are doing the work, building the practices, making progress. But your inner stability is still reactive, still contingent, still at the mercy of what the world is doing on any given day. On the other side of that threshold, everything changes. Your self-belief is no longer something you have. It is something you are. It is no longer a state you access. It is your permanent ground. External circumstances still happen. Criticism still arrives. Failures still occur. But none of them can reach what matters most, because what matters most is no longer dependent on what happens outside of you. This is mental invincibility, and it is available to you. Mental invincibility is not a personality type you're born with. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is not the delusion that nothing will go wrong. It is the deep, practiced, experientially verified knowing that you can handle whatever comes, and that your fundamental worth has nothing to do with any particular outcome. It is built on 5 foundational pillars. The first pillar, self-acceptance without conditions. The mentally invincible person has stopped negotiating their worth. They've made peace with their full human complexity, the strengths and the flaws, the accomplished and the unfinished, the things they're proud of and the things they're still working on. They understand that worthiness is not a reward for achievement. It is inherent in existence. You don't earn your worth. You recognize it. The second pillar, outcome independence. This doesn't mean not caring about results. The mentally invincible person is deeply committed to their goals and works with extraordinary intensity toward them. But their identity is not woven into any specific outcome. If the deal closes, they are worthy. If it doesn't, they are equally worthy. This freedom from attachment, paradoxically, makes them perform with more clarity and less desperation, which is part of what makes them so effective. The third pillar, radical ownership. The mentally invincible person has stopped outsourcing the authorship of their life, not in a self-punishing way. They don't blame themselves for things genuinely outside their control, but they take complete ownership of their response to everything that happens. This is not a burden. It is the most profound liberation available to a human being, because ownership is power. The fourth pillar, anti-fragility. A concept developed by philosopher Nassim Taleb, anti-fragility describes systems that don't just withstand stress, they grow stronger from it. The mentally invincible person has become anti-fragile through enough cycles of challenge, failure, adaptation, and growth that they now approach difficulty with a kind of confident curiosity rather than fear. They don't ask, "Will I survive this?" They ask, "What will this make me?" The fifth pillar, present moment, rootedness. Mental invincibility requires complete presence. The mentally invincible person is not haunted by regrets about their past or anxious about projected futures. Their power is accessible because it exists here, in this moment, in this breath, in this choice. The past is information. The future is direction. But power only lives now. To cross this threshold, you must systematically eliminate remaining sources of external dependency. Where does your confidence still waver based on what someone said or didn't say? Where do you still feel the pull to seek approval before you feel settled? These are the precise locations where your inner work needs to go next. Practice imagining your worst-case scenarios in full detail, and then imagining yourself handling them with resourcefulness and grace. When you prove to yourself that you can survive your fears, those fears lose their ability to govern your present decisions. Build your evidence. Every challenge you have navigated, every loss you have recovered from, every hard thing you have seen through to the other side. This is not ancient history. This is your proof. You have already demonstrated the resilience that mental invincibility requires. You've just been undercounting it. The threshold is not as far as it feels, and once you cross it, you don't cross back. Advanced strategies, the elite practitioner's mental toolkit. The tools that got you from self-doubt to functional self-belief are not the same tools that will take you to genuinely elite-level confidence. Just as athletes must graduate from beginner training to advanced conditioning, your mental training must evolve. Here are 9 advanced strategies that separate practitioners of ordinary confidence from practitioners of truly unstoppable belief. Strategy 1. Identity forecasting. Stop basing your identity on your history. The mentally elite base their identity on their trajectory, who they are becoming, not who they have been. Every decision you face today, ask not what would the person I've been do, but what would the person I'm becoming do? Over time, you collapse the distance between your current self and your future self by consistently operating from the future identity's perspective. Strategy 2. Stress inoculation. Deliberately expose yourself to controlled discomfort to expand your capacity for pressure. Speak in front of audiences when you could stay silent. Pursue projects where failure is possible. Enter rooms where you feel underqualified. The goal is not to seek stress for its own sake, but to build such verified competence under pressure that no real-world situation can intimidate you, because you've already been there. In training. Strategy 3. Quantum confidence. Most people believe confidence must be based on existing skills. Quantum confidence transcends this. It is confidence in your capacity to learn anything you don't yet know. You become confident not because you have mastered everything required, but because you trust that you can master anything required through focused effort. This eliminates the limit on what you can confidently pursue. Strategy 4. Meta-confidence. This is confidence in your confidence. The certainty that even if you experience a dip in self-belief, you have the tools, practices, and track record to return to your center quickly. This meta-level certainty transforms temporary fluctuations in confidence from crises into minor weather patterns. You know they will pass. You know how to navigate them. This knowing makes them far less disruptive. Strategy 5. Reality distortion. This term, originally applied to Steve Jobs, describes the capacity to hold such unshakable belief in a vision that others begin to see its possibility through your certainty. This isn't manipulation. It is the natural result of authentic, grounded conviction. When you stop performing confidence and start living from it, people around you respond to it differently. Opportunities align, collaborators appear, resources surface. Strategy 6. Temporal confidence mastery. Practice moving your consciousness in time to access confidence from multiple sources. Draw strength from past victories. Access the certainty of your future self who has already succeeded. Inhabit the complete presence of this current moment. The ability to access confidence from multiple temporal perspectives makes you extraordinarily resilient, because when present circumstances feel difficult, you can borrow from elsewhere. Strategy 7. Dimensional confidence. Integration. Most people are confident in some domains and insecure in others. Advanced confidence is integrated. It operates across all dimensions of your life simultaneously: professional, personal, physical, relational, creative. Identify the areas where your confidence is thinnest and apply the same principles that built your strongest domain. Integrated confidence has no exploitable weak points. Strategy 8. Confidence. Anchoring. During your peak states of confidence, after a breakthrough, after a great performance, after a moment of genuine clarity, create a physical anchor, a gesture, a phrase, a specific breath pattern. Practice accessing this anchor until it reliably recalls that peak state. Over time, you develop the ability to instantly access your most confident self on command, regardless of circumstances. Strategy 9. Confidence immunity building. Systematically seek situations that test your self-belief and prove to yourself repeatedly that your confidence can withstand assault. Every time you maintain your inner certainty under external pressure, you build immunity to future doubt. Eventually, your confidence doesn't just survive challenges, it grows stronger when challenged. You become anti-fragile in your self-belief. These aren't shortcuts. They are upgrades. Work through them systematically and you won't just become confident. You become the kind of person whose confidence is infrastructural. Not an emotion, but a way of being. Bulletproof, handling critics and doubters from a position of strength. The moment you begin to believe in yourself with real conviction, something fascinating and initially uncomfortable happens. The world pushes back. Not because people are necessarily malicious, though some are. Mostly because your commitment to growth is an implicit challenge to everyone who has accepted limitation as permanent. Your refusal to settle quietly disrupts people who have made peace with settling. Your confidence makes visible the choices they've been avoiding. This pushback is not evidence that you're on the wrong path. It is evidence that you're on a significant one. Small goals, modest ambitions, and average standards attract virtually no criticism. It is precisely when you pursue something worth doing that the doubters appear. If you're not encountering any resistance, you might not be aiming high enough. The key to handling this gracefully is understanding the actual source of most criticism. It isn't about you. It is a projection. When someone tells you your goals are unrealistic, they are often reporting what feels unrealistic given their own beliefs about what is possible. When someone says you're getting too big for your britches, they are often describing the discomfort your growth is causing them to feel about their own stagnation. This doesn't make their criticism painless, but it changes the meaning entirely. Principle 1. Consider the source. The opinion of someone who has built what you want to build carries substantive weight. The opinion of someone who has never attempted anything meaningful is simply not equivalent data. You would not take financial advice from someone who has never built financial security, or relationship advice from someone whose relationships are characterized by chaos. Apply the same standard to self-belief advice from people who don't believe in themselves. Principle 2. Distinguish feedback from attack. Genuine feedback is specific, actionable, and offered with the intent to improve your chances. It targets behavior or strategy. An attack targets your fundamental worth, your right to pursue excellence, or your character. Learn to separate these two categories completely. Welcome the first. Don't engage with the second. Principle 3. Develop outcome independence. The most bulletproof armor against criticism is not needing the critic's approval for your sense of worth. When your self-respect is internally generated rather than externally borrowed, criticism becomes interesting data rather than an emotional emergency. You can consider it without being controlled by it. Principle 4. The redirect strategy. Instead of defending yourself against criticism, mine it for strategic intelligence. Sometimes your critics, even the hostile ones, accidentally reveal something useful about obstacles you haven't fully addressed or gaps in how you're communicating your vision. Extract what's useful, discard what isn't, and use the energy of their opposition as fuel for your next level. Principle 5. The long view. Critics almost always operate from short-term perspectives, judging your potential based on your current circumstances. Your vision is long-term. Keep your eyes there. The people who doubted the most accomplished people in history are historical footnotes at best. The work speaks for itself. Over time. Principle 6. Build your counsel. Actively and deliberately cultivate relationships with people who understand what you're building, who have faced similar opposition, and who respond to your growth with genuine enthusiasm. This community becomes a psychological fortress that you can return to when external opposition feels heavy. Remember, every time you maintain your self-belief under external fire, you demonstrate to yourself that your confidence is real. Critics become, in the most unexpected way, your greatest teachers, providing the very resistance that builds the muscle of unshakable inner strength. The unstoppable identity, the architecture of the person you're becoming. There's a ceiling you cannot see. It's invisible, which is why most people never question it. It follows you from room to room, job to job, relationship to relationship, silently capping everything. It is not your intelligence. It is not your talent. It is not your circumstances. It is your identity. The subconscious operating in the background story you tell about who you are and what people like you can expect. You will never permanently exceed your own self-concept. You can summon heroic effort and temporarily achieve something beyond it. But the subconscious is extraordinarily skilled at engineering a return to baseline. It does this through the choices you make, the opportunities you fail to notice, the subtle self-sabotages that never quite announce themselves as self-sabotage. The only way to sustainably raise your ceiling is to change the story at the foundation. Your unstoppable identity is not who you are now. It is the version of you that exists in your potential, fully expressed, unconstrained by outdated programs, operating from the assumption of your own capability rather than your own limitation. This identity is not a fantasy. It is a possibility that becomes real through deliberate, consistent embodiment. Here's how to architect it. Get specific about your unstoppable self. Not vaguely, with precision. How does this person begin their day? What is their internal dialogue when they face a setback? What do they do with fear when it shows up? What standards do they maintain for how they treat their time, their body, their mind? What do they say yes to, and what do they decline without guilt? The more detailed your picture, the more your subconscious has to work with. Begin acting from this identity in small contexts immediately. Not someday, when you feel ready. Now, in the next interaction, the next decision, the next moment where the choice arises between your old self and your new one. Act from the new one. Repeat. This is not performance. It is rehearsal that gradually becomes reality. The identity shift happens through accumulation of congruent actions, not through declarations. Raise your standards visibly and consistently. Your unstoppable identity requires an upgraded relationship with standards in the content you consume, the commitments you honor, the quality of your work, the way you treat your body and your mind, the conversations you allow yourself to stay in. Everywhere you accept mediocrity, you reinforce the old identity. Everywhere you hold a higher standard, you build the new one. Engineer your environment to support the new identity. Your surroundings, the spaces you live in, the people you spend time with, the content you consume are constantly programming your subconscious. Make sure what surrounds you reflects who you're becoming, rather than who you've been. Purge identity-level language that contradicts your new self. Phrases like, "I'm just not someone who," and "I've never been good at," are not neutral observations. They are identity declarations, and your subconscious treats them as instructions. Replace them, not with empty positivity, but with growth-oriented reframing. "I'm developing the ability to," "I'm becoming the kind of person who." Make decisions from your future identity, not your current limitations. When facing any meaningful choice, ask, "What would my unstoppable self do here?" And then do that, even before you feel completely ready, even before it feels entirely natural. The doing creates the becoming. Your unstoppable identity is not who you will eventually become if everything goes right. It is who you already are beneath the programming. Claim it, living it, the daily reality of unshakable confidence. When self-belief becomes truly unshakable, something shifts that is difficult to describe until you experience it. Confidence stops being something you have and becomes something you are. It stops being a state you access in peak moments and becomes your default ground, the stable, uncontingent foundation beneath everything else. Circumstances still happen. People still challenge you. Failures still occur. But none of it can reach the core because the core is no longer dependent on any of it. Here is what that actually looks like in daily life. The person with unshakable self-belief wakes up without needing the external world to confirm their worth. They don't reach for their phone first to see if they've been validated while they slept. Their mornings begin from the inside, a connection with their own clarity, vision, and purpose that generates its own energy and doesn't require external input to ignite. When challenges arrive during the day, and they do, as they do for everyone, this person experiences them differently. Not without discomfort, but without the narrative spiral that compounds discomfort into identity damage. A setback is a setback, painful, informative, temporary. It does not become evidence for a larger story of inadequacy, because that story is no longer running. Their internal dialogue is remarkably different from average, not relentlessly positive, genuinely honest. When they make a mistake, they address it clearly and without self-laceration. When they face a difficulty, they assess it without catastrophizing. When they succeed, they acknowledge it without false modesty. The conversation is adult, clear, honest, kind, forward-moving. They make decisions with a quality of decisiveness that others find quietly remarkable. They gather relevant information, exercise their judgment, choose and commit, without endless second-guessing, without opinion polling everyone in their network, without waiting for external confirmation that the choice is correct. If it proves suboptimal, they adjust without shame. Their relationship with fear is transformed from adversarial to collaborative. They feel afraid. They don't suppress it. They interpret it as information and direction. They move toward it with curiosity rather than away from it with avoidance. Fear is no longer a stop sign. It is a trail marker. In social situations, they are present in a way that is magnetically different from people still seeking approval, not because they are performing presence, but because they genuinely do not need anything from the interaction to feel okay about themselves. This freedom from neediness creates a natural warmth and ease that others find compelling. They set and hold boundaries without guilt or lengthy explanation. They say no to things that don't align with their priorities simply because those things don't align with their priorities. They say yes from a place of genuine choice rather than anxious compliance. They pursue their goals with what can only be described as settled certainty, not the loud, performance-driven certainty of someone trying to convince themselves, but the quiet, grounded certainty of someone who has done the inner work and knows the outcome of their sustained commitment is simply a matter of time. They handle success and failure with the same equanimity. Neither inflates them nor deflates them. Their center holds. This is not a fantasy. This is not a personality type reserved for a privileged few. This is the lived experience of anyone who has done the work described in this book with consistency and commitment. Every practice you've learned here moves you toward this ground. Every choice you make from your new identity instead of your old limitations brings this experience closer. It is available to you, not eventually, but incrementally beginning now. The unstoppable you. Your complete transformation and unlimited future. You started this journey as someone searching for something, more confidence, less fear, a way through the static of self-doubt into something clear and strong and genuinely yours. You are ending it as something different, not someone who found a few useful techniques, but someone who has encountered the truth of their own capacity at a level that cannot be unfound. The architecture of your transformation is permanent because it is not built on information received. It is built on understanding earned. You now know that self-belief is not a feeling. It is a decision made repeatedly, backed by consistent action. You don't wait to feel confident before you act. You build confidence by acting and acting again and acting again until the neural pathways of certainty are wider and more traveled than the old pathways of doubt. You now know that your brain is not your history. It is a construction site responding to your inputs, building exactly what you give it the most consistent material to build. You have been giving it new material. The structures being built are different from the ones that stood before. You now know that your identity is not your past. It is a living, evolving story that you get to author, not by wishful thinking, but by the deliberate daily practice of acting as the person you are becoming until that person is simply who you are. You now know that fear is not your enemy. It is your map. It points with remarkable precision toward your growth. You have learned to read it rather than run from it. You now know that you do not need external validation to stand in your own worth. You have an internal scoring system now. You answer to your own standards. The opinions of others have become interesting data rather than determinants of your value. You now know how to transform setbacks into stepping stones, critics into teachers, and difficulty into the exact raw material that builds the most enduring kind of strength. You now know that the compound effect of daily, seemingly small choices is the actual mechanism of extraordinary transformation, and that you are making those choices now, in a direction that serves the person you are becoming. Here is what I want you to hold on to as you carry these pages into your life. The unstoppable person you have been building toward is not a future version of you. It is the real version. The one that exists beneath the layers of old programming, old fear, old identity stories assembled from incomplete information and other people's limitations. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming who you actually are. The transformation you have begun is not fragile. It is not contingent on everything going perfectly or on external circumstances cooperating, or on the people around you suddenly deciding to believe in you. It is resilient precisely because it is rooted in the one thing no circumstance can take from you: what you have chosen to know about yourself. Your future is now genuinely open in a way it perhaps has not been before. Not because your circumstances have changed, though they will, but because the person navigating those circumstances has changed. The lens has shifted. The operating system has been upgraded. The default response to challenge is no longer retreat. It is forward. The world genuinely needs the fully expressed version of you, not the carefully managed, strategically minimized, approval-seeking version that fear constructed. The real one, your unique combination of experience, perspective, and capability, brought forward with the full conviction that it is worth bringing, is something that doesn't exist anywhere else on earth. No one else has exactly what you have, and your willingness to show up with unshakable belief in its value is not arrogance. It is responsibility. You are unstoppable. Not someday, not eventually, not after enough evidence accumulates. Now. Already. As a present, active, verifiable fact. The next thought you think, the next decision you face, the next moment where the old voice whispers small and the new voice says forward. That's where you begin. You already have.